There's a plant growing in the dry soils of the Middle East right now that people have been eating for over 4,000 years. And there's a reason your garden centaur has never once tried to sell it to you. In ancient Egypt, it wasn't just food. It was placed inside the tombs of pharaohs as a burial offering. Not for ceremony, not for ritual, but because they considered it too precious to leave behind. Roman soldiers carried it on long campaigns. Ayurvedic healers documented it in texts dating back 3,000 years. And somewhere along the way, between the industrial farming revolution and the rise of the modern supplement industry, it quietly disappeared from the Western table. What they didn't tell you is that this plant can grow from a stick you push into the ground, that it produces leaves 12 months out of the year in the right climate, that it contains more protein per ounce than eggs, more calcium than milk, and more vitamin C than oranges. All in one leaf you can walk outside and pick for free. The name of this plant is moringa, and the fact that you've probably never grown it is not an accident. The average American family spends over $1,200 a year just on vegetables, and that number resets to zero every single season. You plant, you harvest, frost hits, and you start over. Every spring is another investment. Every summer is another gamble against drought, pests, and soil depletion. The modern garden has been quietly engineered to keep you buying seeds, buying fertilizer, buying supplements to replace the nutrients your soil no longer produces. And honestly, it makes me frustrated when I look at how much that system has cost regular families over the decades, when something like moringa has been sitting outside the frame this entire time. Think about what a truly self-sustaining food plant would need to be. It would need to grow fast, not garden fast, but explosively fast. It would need to thrive in poor soil because most backyard soil isn't ideal. It would need to survive drought because water is expensive and weather is unpredictable. It would need to be nutritionally dense because the whole point of growing your own food is to actually nourish yourself. And ideally, it would never stop producing. Plant it once, and it feeds you for the rest of your life. That plant exists. It's moringa. And the reason most Western gardeners don't know about it comes down to one simple, uncomfortable fact. It doesn't need anything you'd have to buy. Ancient Egyptian healers called it the tree of life. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's documentation. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest preserved medical texts in the world, dating to around 1550 BC, references moringa oil as a skin remedy and food source. But this plant wasn't just an Egyptian secret. In the Indian subcontinent, Ayurvedic practitioners were documenting moringa for everything from fatigue to inflammation more than 2,000 years before the birth of modern medicine. The Mauryan warriors of ancient India, one of the most feared armies in the ancient world, were fed moringa leaf extract before battle specifically to combat exhaustion and give them endurance. 2,000 years ago, in the eastern Mediterranean, Roman and Greek physicians wrote about ben oil, the oil pressed from moringa seeds, as a perfume base, a preservative, and a food oil so stable it resisted going rancid for years without refrigeration. Imagine that, a naturally shelf-stable cooking oil that predates refrigerators by about 35 centuries. And here's what's fascinating. Across every culture that used moringa, and there were dozens spread across 3 continents, the story was always the same. It was a poor man's superfood. It grew in places where nothing else would. It asked for almost nothing and gave back almost everything. Rural families in what is now India and sub-Saharan Africa grew it outside their front doors, the way we grow basil on a windowsill. Automatic, constant, free. So here's the question worth asking. Why don't we know about it? Follow the money, and the picture gets clearer fast. Moringa doesn't fit the modern agricultural model because it doesn't need to be replanted every year. You can't sell someone a new packet of moringa seeds each spring once they have a mature tree already growing in their yard. It doesn't need proprietary fertilizers. It doesn't need pesticides. The plant produces its own natural compounds that most insects avoid. It doesn't require expensive soil amendments. And crucially, it's not something that can be patented and sold back to you in capsule form at $40 a bottle, or at least not without the industry hoping you never figure out that the loose leaf version is growing 3 feet away from your back door. When industrial agriculture consolidated through the 20th century, the crops that survived were the ones that could be mechanically harvested at massive scale, packaged, shipped, and sold. Moringa doesn't cooperate with that model. Its leaves are delicate. They don't survive long-haul shipping without processing. It grows as a tree, not a row crop. The system didn't suppress moringa out of some coordinated conspiracy. It just had no financial incentive to promote it. And so it was quietly left behind while the industry poured billions into marketing crops that required you to keep spending. And that is exactly what they were counting on. Now, let me show you the science. And I promise, this isn't going to feel like a nutrition lecture. Think of a multivitamin. You buy it because it fills nutritional gaps. The things your food isn't giving you enough of. Now imagine a leaf that does that job better than most supplements on the market. That's moringa. And here's why it's not too good to be true. It's not that moringa has magic properties. It's that the plant concentrates an unusually wide spectrum of nutrients simultaneously in a bioavailable form, meaning your body can actually absorb them, unlike the synthetic forms found in most supplements. A single 100-gram serving of fresh moringa leaves contains roughly 9 grams of protein, comparable to a small egg. It contains calcium at over 2 times the density of milk by weight. It contains 7 times the vitamin C of oranges. It carries significant amounts of iron, potassium, magnesium, and vitamins A, B, and E, all in the same leaf. Think of it like a solar panel for your body's nutritional system. A single panel doesn't power a city, but placed correctly, grown consistently, eaten regularly, it starts covering needs you didn't even know you had deficiencies in. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this sounds like a late-night infomercial, and I get it. But the skepticism here should be directed at why this information is hard to find, not at the plant itself. Moringa is listed by the World Health Organization as a recommended supplementary food source for malnourished populations, precisely because the science is so thoroughly documented. This isn't fringe health folklore. It's botany that got economically inconvenient and quietly deprioritized. Now here's the part that changes everything. Because moringa isn't a plant you grow, harvest, and start over. It is what botanists call a perennial. Plant it once, and under the right conditions, it grows back every single year. In frost-free climates, it never even stops. It just keeps going. Perpetually. That is the foundation of everything. Here's how to grow it. First, you have 2 options, seed or cutting. Cuttings root faster and are the traditional method, the way families in India and East Africa have propagated this plant for centuries. Find a cutting about the thickness of your thumb and roughly the length of your forearm. Maybe 30 to 45 centimeters if you want to be precise, but think arm length. Let it dry in shade for 2 to 3 days. This is the step most people skip, and it matters. Cuttings planted while the wound is still fresh are prone to rot before they root. After a few days, push the cutting about 6 inches into well-draining soil. That's it. No rooting hormone needed, no special soil blend, just well-draining ground and sunlight. Within 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see new leaf growth emerging. That new growth is the cutting telling you it's alive. If you're starting from seed, soak the seeds in water for 24 hours first. They have a tough outer coat, and the soak gives them a head start. Plant them about 1 inch deep in well-draining soil. Moringa hates waterlogged roots more than almost anything else, so if your soil holds water, mix in a little sand or build a slight mound. Seeds germinate within 5 to 12 days in warm weather. Now, here's the detail that surprises most people. Moringa is drought tolerant to an almost absurd degree. Once established, after about 3 months of growth, you can largely stop watering it and it will continue producing. It evolved in semi-arid regions. It was designed by thousands of years of natural selection to thrive with minimal water. In a drought year, when your tomatoes are struggling and your lettuce has bolted, moringa is usually the thing that doesn't notice. For harvesting, the young leaves are what you want. The small feathery clusters near the ends of branches. They're the most tender and the most nutritionally concentrated. You can pick them regularly starting about 6 to 8 weeks after planting a cutting. The more you harvest, the bushier and more productive the plant becomes. Think of it like pruning a hedge. Regular cutting encourages dense, vigorous growth. In a mature tree in a warm climate, you can harvest leaves every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the year. In the kitchen, fresh moringa leaves taste like a cross between spinach and watercress, mild, slightly peppery, with a pleasant green bitterness that fades quickly when cooked. The simplest use is exactly what traditional families have done for generations. A handful of fresh leaves stirred into soups, stews, or rice dishes in the last 2 minutes of cooking. Heat destroys some of the vitamin C, so if you want the full nutritional hit, add them raw to salads or blend them into smoothies. The dried powder, made simply by drying the leaves in shade and crumbling them, stores for months and can be added to almost anything without changing the flavor noticeably. 1 teaspoon of dried moringa powder in your morning oatmeal, and you've started your day with a nutritional profile that most supplement companies would charge you $30 a month to replicate. Stay with me here, because this next piece is where most people give up too early. If you live somewhere with frost, moringa will die back to the ground every winter. A lot of people see that and assume the plant is dead. It isn't. In most hardiness zones, down to about zone 9, moringa will regrow from its root system in spring once soil temperatures warm up. The key is to mulch heavily around the base before winter. A thick layer of straw or leaves, about the height of a large coffee mug, insulates the root crown from hard freezes. In zones colder than that, the easiest solution is a large container. Moringa grows well in pots that you bring indoors or into a garage during the coldest months. It goes semi-dormant, needs almost no water, and picks back up the moment it gets light and warmth again. For small spaces, moringa responds beautifully to what growers call the pollarding method. cutting the main trunk back regularly to keep the tree at a manageable height of 3 to 4 feet. This keeps the leaves within easy reach and dramatically increases leaf production per square foot. You don't need a sprawling tree. You need a consistently productive shrub, and you can shape moringa into exactly that. You now know what 4,000 years of human civilization understood, and what the modern food system quietly, profitably forgot. A plant that costs almost nothing to establish, requires almost no inputs to maintain, produces nutritious food continuously, and can be grown in poor soil and hot climates with minimal water. There's no product on a garden store shelf that does what moringa does. There's no subscription supplement that sources its nutrition from something you could be walking outside to pick every 2 weeks. No chemicals, no complicated systems, no annual replanting cost, just one plant that keeps producing for as long as you tend it, and often longer. Here's what I want you to do today. Go find 3 things: a container or a patch of well-draining ground, a bag of moringa seeds, they're inexpensive and available online, and a sunny spot that gets at least 6 hours of direct light. Soak the seeds tonight, plant them this weekend. In less than 2 weeks, you'll have proof that this works. After 8 weeks, you'll be harvesting your first leaves. After 1 year, you'll have a plant that will keep producing for the rest of your life. If you want more of these forgotten growing methods, the ones that have been feeding people for centuries before the modern gardening industry decided you needed to keep buying things, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm uncovering these techniques every week, and some of them are even more surprising than this one. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever grown moringa, or is this the first you're hearing about it? I read everything. They can design a food system that keeps you dependent. They can fill garden stores with things you have to repurchase every season. But they cannot stop you from pushing a stick into the ground and watching it feed your family for years to come. That knowledge is yours now. Use it.